Hello, everyone. My name is Francis Donald, and I'd like to welcome you to this 15th session in an ongoing series of webinars on sacred number and geometry. If you'd like to view any of or all of the first 14 sessions, they are available on makara.us. If you have any questions about the GoToMeeting interface, feel free to text the BL. It seemed like we saved time in our last session by assigning volunteer readers in advance, so let's try this again. So whether or not you have a headset, if you are willing to read one or more of the various quotes that will appear on your screen, and there's going to be a bunch of them this time, and I hope you will be, please raise your hand now. BL will take a tally and call on one of you when we need a reader. As soon as we get 6 readers, we'll move on, though you're welcome to volunteer after we get to 6. Don't be shy. It's good to hear from as many of you as possible. By the way, when you read, there's no need to read the book title at the end of the quote. Just a moment. Okay.
We need several more, please.
Yeah, please jump in there, guys. I know there's not that many of you here yet, but if you could volunteer, that would be helpful. You just keep volunteering behind the scenes here, and we'll keep going. Okay, during our last session, we took a look at the ubiquitous presence and influence of phi and the Fibonacci sequence, followed by an analysis of pyramids and of the Great Pyramid in particular. I'd like to start today's session, as we did a couple of sessions back, by getting into some of DK's ideas on the effects of symbols. During my first reading of DK's teaching on the subject, I was puzzled by his emphasis on symbols. Statements like, the power to interpret symbols ever precedes true revelation, seemed surprising until I eventually learned that symbols are the most direct means of accessing the intuition, and that the intuition is essential to building the Antakarana. Actually, let's take a pause here and go ahead and turn off that talking head. And I'll come out and did you turn it off?
Oh, no, sorry, I was waiting on you too, but I will here. Oops.
There we go.
There we go, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, guys, this is one of the quote improvements in the software. But anyway, GK says, symbols are the outer invisible forms of the inner spiritual realities. And when facility in discovering the reality behind any specific form has been gained, that very fact will indicate the awakening of the intuition. The 3 aspects, the outer form, the inner spiritual reality, and the bridge between the two. DK gives us a bridging method that reads almost like a guided meditation. Let's get a reader for this.
Okay. Morya, please go ahead.
Always seek the underlying concept of any symbol studied. This will carry you inward, from the brain to the mind, into the realm of ideas. You then become aware of the concept or idea which the sign or symbol embodies. You comprehend its meaning and for what it stands. You grasp the purpose for which the form has been brought into manifestation.
Thank you, Morya. So again, we see that it's not really about the symbol itself, but rather about contacting the life force that the symbol veils. And the surest way to access that life force is by studying and meditating on the forms that veil those life forces. DK recommends studying a total of 4 symbols per year. These webinars are introducing many more than that, but the next step is the daily contemplation of a symbol for 3 months, 4 and 3 month periods. So can we have a reader for this next DK quote?
Please go ahead, Anne. Ooh, there's a lot of static there. I'm
Let's
sorry.
choose someone else.
Yeah. Let me see. Please go ahead, Leah.
As soon as the symbol is truly familiar to you and can be recalled to mind with little effort, endeavor to sense its quality, to contact its vibration, and to note its emotional effect upon you. This may vary from day to day, or it may always be the same. Be simply honest in your noting this astral reaction to the symbol and see where such reactions lead you, remembering always that they are not intuitional, but are reactions to the feelings or astral body.
Thank you, Leah. Again, we see an emphasis on feeling. Quality, vibration, and emotional impact are all attributes of receptivity. So, if this discipline appeals to you, you might consider adding the contemplation of one of the many symbols introduced in these webinars to your daily practice. If you choose to do this with one of the simpler symbols, use one of the simpler symbols, like a circle, a triangle, a square, or a cross. Okay, let's kick this 4th and final webinar on the number 5. Let's kick it off by taking a look at the 5th ray of concrete knowledge or science, which reveals a lot about the quality of fiveness. Even the name of this ray reveals a relationship to the other aspects of the number 5 that we've studied, such as the 5th or the mental plane, and the fact that in the movement from the square to the pentagon, we gain an upper point, which relates to the head of a human being. Could we have a reader for this introduction to Ray 5?
Please, you're on self-mute, but please go ahead, Clesia. You're on self-mute. There you go.
Hello, can you hear me?
There you go.
Ray 5 is the latest of the rays to come into activity, and it is only in process of coming forth to power. It is steadily increasing in potency, and the result of its influence will be to guide humanity into increasing knowledge. Its energy beats upon the minds of men at this time and produces that stimulation which lies behind all the scientific approach to truth in all departments of human thought. Being also the ray which governs the personality aspect of the 4th kingdom in nature, and being one of the rays determining or conditioning our Aryan race. Its present potency is excessive. This is a point to be remembered with care, for it accounts for much of that we can see happening in the world of thought.
Thank you, Malia. I appreciate it. Okay, these ray appearances are, of course, cyclic. It's not difficult to track the dramatic influence of this ray, the ray of knowledge in concrete science, since its inception in 1775. But 21 million years ago, its influence was even more profound. For at that time, through that great initiation called individualization, it was largely responsible for birthing the era of mind. Since then, we're told, the most powerful 5th ray influx is occurring right now in this 5th or Aryan race. The influence of the 5th ray leads us, and I'm paraphrasing DK here, to a gradual awareness of the purpose of deity, thus linking it with the 1st ray. It's the force that moves us from instinct to intellect. which in turn allows us to replace reactive kama manas with responsive mindfulness. Can we get a reader for this next quote?
Please go ahead, Gabriel.
Okay, is that me? That's you? It is? Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
That in the next root race, Ray 5 will commence to pour its power into the animal kingdom, gradually stimulating the instinctual mind of the animal until it vibrates to the ray of the intellect of knowledge. This will bring about an organizing of the animal brain and the transfer of the power of the solar plexus center to the head center, and consequently a shift in the animal polarization and an added activity of the brain in the head.
Thank you, Gabrielle. In fact, the third and fifth ray rule the animal kingdom. The latter holds an analogous position among the seven kingdoms of nature to that of the mental plane and the subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. Excuse me. This is because the purpose of this kingdom is to prepare for the influx of the fifth ray at the time of individualization, which for them lies in the future. Looks like this guy is also doing some fourth ray work. Notice it's not just a doodle on his paper there. It's actually an elephant. Now, I can't say whether this is a joke or he really painted that, but elephants are considered to be among the smartest of the animals. So I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, the Venusian heavenly man is the fifth ray lord of this solar system, the true lord of knowledge. Since rays 3 and 5 rule the Aryan race, we have a particularly strong connection with both Saturn and Venus, a connection further strengthened by the fact that the fifth ray is also the personality ray of the human kingdom. Of course, our souls, the sons of mind, are Venusian, and we contact them on the fifth subplane, counting upwards, of the mental plane. So we can see that the lineup of fifth ray influence at this time gives us an unprecedented opportunity for soul connection and for awakening the Ajna center, which is the center connected with the fifth ray, just as the heart is connected with the second ray and the solar plexus with the sixth ray. In fact, we're told that in this world cycle, humanity is the planetary Ajna center. Here's DK's chart on this. You have the head center associated with Shambhala, the heart center associated with the hierarchy, the Ajna center with humanity, and the throat center with the animal kingdom. Okay, the key word connected with the fifth ray is detachment, a quality that cuts both ways. In the early stages of the fifth ray development, detachment expresses itself as critical, analytical, and separative, over-discriminating expression, to use DK's words. But when mental polarity is achieved and the love aspect tempers one's perspective, personality detachment becomes divine detachment. Between these two stages, a twofold crisis occurs, which DK tells us about in Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1. So what I'd like to do is get two readers for these two paragraphs. So can we get volunteer readers for these two paragraphs, please?
Okay, Trudy, there we go. Okay, please go first. Please go first, Trudy, and then Guadalupe will do the second one, okay?
Great.
Okay. That in which there comes the achieving of equilibrium and what might be called a balanced point of view. This balanced vision causes much difficulty and leads to what might be called the ending of the joy life and of desire. This is not a pleasant experience to the disciple. It leads to much aridness in the life experience and to a sense of loss. It often takes much wise handling, and frequently time elapses before the disciple emerges on the other side of the experience.
Thank you, Trudy.
This balanced condition in which the not-self and the self, the life aspect and the form aspect, are seen as they essentially are, through the aid and the use of the discriminating faculty of the mind, leads eventually to a crisis of choice and to the major task of the disciple's life. This is the detaching of himself from the grip of form experience and consciously, rapidly, definitely, and with the intention preparing himself for the great expansion of initiation.
Thank you. This triumph of reason is expressed in this list, which suggests that the intellect and the intuition are actually super sensory. That is, they belong to the senses that we know, but it suggests that they stand in a more tenuous relationship to them. Okay, another tidbit about Ray 5. France and Austria are the countries that express the fifth ray. France has as its keywords, "I release the light," an apropos motto for the Age of Enlightenment, strengthened by such Frenchmen as Descartes and Voltaire. As regards humanity, Ray 5 achieves its goal by working in conjunction with Ray 4. Together, these rays facilitate the move from intellect to intuition. Could we get a reader for this paragraph, please?
Scott, please go ahead.
Humanity now walks in the light of day, symbolically speaking, on Earth. And these two rays were responsible for the process of initiating the human evolution in this major cycle. Our objective is the harmonizing of the higher and the lower aspects, or principles, both in the individual and in the whole. This involves conflict and struggle, but produces eventually beauty, creative power in art, and synthesis. This result would not have been possible had it not been for the potent work of the fifth ray of concrete knowledge, which, in conjunction with the fourth ray, produced that reflection of divinity we call a man.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, the color associated with 5, the mental plane, and the fifth ray, is orange. Perhaps we could get a reader for this.
Sure, I've exhausted my list, so I'm just going to start back over again.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, please go ahead, Morya.
Sure thing. This color is the color of the mental plane, the color that marks burning. It is a symbol of flame, and curiously enough, the color that epitomizes separation. But I would have you note that the occult orange is not exactly the color that you understand by the term. Exoteric orange is a blend of yellow and red. Esoteric orange is a purer yellow, and the red scarcely is seen at all. This orange comes in as a vibration set up by a cosmic ray, for you have to remember that this fifth ray, just as the fifth plane and the fifth principle, is closely allied to the cosmic ray of the intelligence, or to that activity aspect which found its great expression in the first solar system. The synthetic ray of that time was the green ray, and it found one of its closest alliances in the range of orange, or mind, or intelligence, demonstrating through form.
Thank you. He goes on to say, in the activity or previous solar system, you have the third aspect of universal mind, demonstrating through the orange of the concrete subray. adaptability through form, form which perfectly expresses that latent activity. Similarly, in the second system of love, you have the love aspect demonstrating through the yellow of the ray of harmony or beauty. Love expressing itself perfectly through unity, harmony, or beauty. So, orange could be called a means of expression for the color green, just as yellow is a means for indigo or love wisdom to express harmony and beauty. DK says the force of orange, which is scientific apprehension by the intelligence, comes in to perfect the link between spirit and form, between life and the vehicles through which it is seeking expression. This allies orange with the second aspect of divinity, much as the fifth and second ray lords of Venus and Jupiter are allied, and reveals the energy expressed by orange to be the linking agent of the higher mental subplanes. The connection between orange and knowledge is underscored by the fact that the knowledge petals of the egoic lotus all have orange as part of their makeup, as one of the three colors. Orange is also used in healing. It stimulates the action of the etheric body, removes congestion, and increases the flow of prana. Now, the flame-colored sun, which rules Leo, the fifth sign, is the source of all the prana in our solar system. DK tells us that in the future, orange will be used to facilitate the death process. Can we get a reader for this, please?
Oops. Okay. Let's go to Asha, please. There you go. Asha, please go ahead. We can't hear you. Okay, let me go down to Leia. Leia?
Later, when more innate color is known, only orange lights will be permitted in a sick room of a dying person, and these will only be installed with due ceremony when there is assuredly no possibility of recovery. Orange aids the focusing in the head, just as red stimulates the solar plexus, and green has a definite effect upon the heart and the life streams.
Thank you, Leah. Appreciate it. This is directly related to where the energy exits the body, and the preferred place of exit is in the head. But the other two possibilities he mentions here, which is the solar plexus for the undeveloped human being and the heart center for the good, well-meaning human being who's not yet on the path of discipleship. Interesting, that connection. Okay. The head center and the base of the spine, the 1 and 7, form the channel for the Kundalini to ascend. It's interesting to note that the 4 petals that form the chakra at the base of the spine radiate, in DK's words, with orange fire. My guess is that this is a vestige of the orange of the previous solar system. It also shows its connection between the head center and that inherent connection that's found between the numbers 1 and 7. Letter 7 from the Letters of Occult Meditation is the go-to source for DK's thoughts on color, and is full of such esoteric statements as, orange holds the secret for the sons of mind, and in the study of flame, which exoterically blends all the colors, comes illumination. Now, since illumination is a function of egoic contact, the contemplation of orange, which, remember, is not the orange that we think of as orange, like the fruit, but is rather closer to a pure yellow with hardly any red showing at all. Anyway, this contemplation of orange helps us build the Antakarana. DK uses color in his teachings on the three solar systems. He tells us, quote, in the relationship between indigo, blue, and yellow lies hid a secret. This statement refers to our present solar system. In the relationship between green, orange, and red, another is revealed. This refers to the previous solar system and suggests that the dominant rays of that Maha Manvantara were 1, 3, and 5. His final statement, in the relationship between blue, red, and violet lies still another mystery, refers to the next solar system, the one yet to come. DK then says, the student who by using his intuition apprehends these three mysteries has found the key to the greater cycle and holds the key to evolutionary development. Remember, therefore, when studying the microcosm, that the same relationship will be found and will open the portal to the kingdom of God within. Well, this really moves it from an abstract cosmic occultism to the practical occultism that we're all concerned with in discipleships, that the awareness of the colors, of the role that these colors play at each level of becoming is crucial. One way of translating the three solar systems into the microcosm is to relate the previous solar system to the personality, the present solar system to the soul, and the next solar system to the monad. From the personality point of view, the green of form, nurtured by the green of the vegetable kingdom, develops itself through the orange of manas. As one reaches the higher mental planes, subplanes, that is, the disciple begins to shift his or her focus and thus becomes sensitive to the purpose of this solar system, the dual soul forces of indigo and yellow. If you remember, one of DK's great one-liners, indigo is the goal of endeavor. In the next solar system, red and violet will be the transformative agents. Now, those are the colors of the first and seventh ray, thus encompassing the whole. And just how they'll come into play, of course, is beyond the knowledge of even the highest initiates of this system. Blue, which you'll notice was one of the three colors for both this and the next solar system, is said to dominate the aura of a perfected human being. This is really esoteric stuff, and it's full of blinds. There's a lot about this also in the Secret Doctrine, and it's there's all kinds of blinds. But even a cursory reading shows the vital role that color plays, both macro and microcosmically. Okay. Now let's change gears and take a look at how the number 5 expresses itself in the major arcana of the Tarot. The 5th major arcanum is the Hierophant. This arcanum could be described as that mode of consciousness that allows us to create a link with our higher selves. Thus, from a human standpoint, it represents the completed Antakarana. Remember, these arcana are not so much personages as they are archetypal streams of energy. The word Hierophant means revealer of sacred things. He is the pontifex, which means bridge maker. The Hebrew word associated with the Hierophant is vau, V-A-U, which means hook in Hebrew, to join, or yoke, which is also the etymology of the word yoga. Hearing is the sense associated with the Hierophant, suggesting a link to the voice of God, as in, he that hath ears to hear, let him hear. We can see in this bridging quality the relationship to DK's teachings on the 5th ray and the color orange, which we're told move us from the halls of learning to the halls of wisdom. We do this through that stream of energy called the Hierophant. Taurus, ruled by Venus, is the astrological sign related to the Hierophant. You can see the Taurian symbol depicted near the top of the throne. Taurus rules the neck, which links the head to the body. We also see this link in the Hierophant's crown, made up of 3 levels of trefoils. The lower has 7, the upper has 3, and the level linking the lower 7 with the higher 3 has 5 trefoils, again representing Manas. The Hierophant's robe is, not surprisingly, orange, linking it to Taurus and establishing this arcanum as a wielder of the transcendent illuminating energy of the 5th ray. Interestingly, the Hierophant's inner robe is blue, the complementary color of orange. DK tells us that sometimes in the ancient wisdom teachings, rather than the actual color, the complementary color is given as a blind. Blinds are employed to hide some particular truth. However, they are not attempts to mislead, as is often thought, but rather are used to engage the intuition. And once a blind is discerned, it often provides additional info on the subject. Used together, blue and orange represent the exoteric outer and the esoteric inner perfected human being. The crossed keys at the Hierophant's feet are made of gold and silver, again suggesting the bridging function between lunar and solar. Paul Foster Case says, psychologically, the Hierophant represents intuition, which follows reasoning and adds to it. Intuition is subconscious response to reason, whereby thought relations go beyond the results attained by reason. Usually these are perceived by interior hearing. Of course, DK's works have a deep teaching on the intuition, and they take it much further than we see in this statement, but Case was definitely on the right track. There are 2 ways that 5 manifests in the Tree of Life. One is through the 5th Sephiroth, or Geburah, which relates to the 5s of the lower arcana of the Tarot. The other is the path between the 2 Sephirah, Chesed and Chokhmah. This is the path of the Hierophant. As you can see by the 5s of the lower arcana, Geburah is the destructive agent of change, the Shivic principle. It is that which eliminates the obsolete, excessive, redundant, outworn, and superfluous aspects of our lives. It stands in polarity to Chesed, the 4th Sephiroth, depicted by the minor arcana 4s, which show stability and changelessness. You can see them there on the right. Geburah is associated with divine fire and the left hand of God, which exoterically is seen as punishment, but esoterically as purification. The numbers associated with Geburah is 216, which is 3 times 72. And you might recognize this number 72, which is also the number associated with Chesed, its opposite. 72 is 1/5 of 360. That's the angle of the pentagon and pentagram, and therefore it activates the energy of 5. The polarity of Geburah and Chesed, just like the 4th and 5th rays, and any pair of opposite signs in the zodiac, work together in the transformational process. But Geburah itself has two faces, much like the lower and higher aspects of the 5th ray. Both are represented by the esoteric teaching. The mind is the slayer of the real. That would be the face to the left. and the slayer of the slayer. Thus, Geburah is both an agent of karma and a revealer of the higher way. The fifth path between Sephiroth, which relates to the Hierophant, is a very different energy. This represents the path between Chokmah, the supernal or cosmic father, and Chesed, the father in manifestation. It is the path between the micro and the macro prosopis. In a book called The Kabbalistic Tarot, Robert Wang described it as, this path, as the absolute foundation of the process of revelation. It is that which ties all that we are to the divine spirit. This absolute foundation is in keeping with the Hierophant's association with the fixed earth of Taurus. It represents the fundamental path between the above and the below, between solar and lunar consciousness, and because it is the way, it also represents teaching and mastery. We see here a correlation in DK's description of the energy of orange as that which leads one between the halls or from the halls of knowledge to the halls of wisdom. Again, from Robert Wang, the Hierophant is the only teacher. He is, as the esoteric title of the card states, the magus of the eternal, the administrator of the duality that emerges with Chokmah, is structured by Bina, and which begins below the abyss in Chesed. Okay, during the second half of today's session, we'll be analyzing a very special geometric figure, and one that is much more complex than anything we've analyzed thus far. The fivefold pattern that Venus traces in the heavens. There are actually two Venusian patterns. The first, depicted here, is a heliocentric view of the path that the orbits of Venus and the Sun make together. The other is the path Venus makes when viewed from Earth. This is a simplified version of that, and we'll be analyzing this one. By the way, if you're interested, there are a number of terrific animations of this pattern on YouTube. Just do a search for pentagram of Venus and it'll bring it up. So, as recommended by DK, we'll start with an exoteric consideration of this path's line and form. At this point, we're not looking for meaning or significance, but rather for a tabulation of this figure's physical attributes. As we make our mental list, we invite you to participate. When called on, please briefly describe a single physical attribute of this figure. Your observation may seem obvious, like the ones listed here. That's fine. Any ideas that help us to physically define this figure are useful. Okay, I'll start. By way of example, this figure is made from one continuous curvilinear line. And the second point, using the 5 crossing points at the center of the figure, a perfect 5-pointed star can be drawn. Okay, any further observations? What other physical attributes do you see in this figure? It's a bit daunting compared to triangles and squares, but also you may find that there's more information, more to observe, both physically, both from the point of view of physical attributes and conceptually. So, do we have any takers, DL? Any?
Not yet.
Thoughts?
Not yet.
Okay,
They're all
then.
still considering.
That's fine. You know, it's I've had a little while to think about this, so it takes a bit to get used to the sense of this figure. And
Here we go. Here we go.
Okay.
Please go ahead, Morya.
Well, I'm struck by the 5 loops at the center, which actually sort of fit into like the armpits of the pentagram.
Indeed.
And, what strikes me about it is that years ago, before figure skating moved to the sort of the showy stuff they're doing now, to be a figure skater, you had to be able to trace very precise lines on the ice, and making loops like that was part of it. And so there's something visceral for me about tracing those loops and the sort of the turn of the body that would be required to do that.
How interesting. Well, you know, maybe in the Aquarian age at some point, when we watch Olympic figure skating, you know, someone will come out and perfectly trace this path of Venus on the ice. Wouldn't that be something?
Yes, it would.
Thank you. Other thoughts, folks? Anything else?
Scott, please go ahead.
Okay, I count, well, put the 5 points and the 5 intermediate points, as it were, five lines of crossing points that go to the center. So from the top, for instance, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 down to the top point of the star. There are 10 of those around the circle. There are 40 of these crossing points that I see.
That's very astute. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, well observed. Other thoughts, folks?
Following Morya, from the armpits of the star, I will go to the vertices, and each vertex forms like a petal, and that petal pattern repeats 4 times, enlarging the pattern.
Yes.
And the first petal then goes out to a further loop and comes back to a cluster or central area.
Thank you for that. That's a good observation. You'll find that if you look closely that there are actually 8 sets of 5 petals, not just 4. There are 4 upright sets of 5 petals, but if you look to either the left or right, and you'll see another set of 4. Thank you for that observation. Oh, you're doing great, guys.
Okay,
stealing all my thunder here. So what else?
We have a couple of more, but let's try Anne Veronica again. She says she's got her sound issues worked out, and she had a couple of comments. Please go ahead, Anne.
Perfect.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, nice.
Much better.
Well, I'm seeing a 5-pointed star. I think somebody else told it before me, and it expands outwards. I can see it expanding outward. And you can also think of it as going inward. And also, it reminds me the seed of life. The Vesica Piscis makes the seed of life, the 6 circles that make the seed of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
well, you're right, first of all, that you do, every place that you have a 5-petal lotus, you have, a potential 5-pointed star. So, yes, they do go both in and outwards. So thank you for that. Other thoughts, folks?
Please go ahead, Vera.
Yeah, overall pattern. So the center is spacious and it's expanding into all directions, but as it progresses towards the outer periphery, the circle, it becomes cramped. So
more congested. Yeah.
A definite sort of sense of there is a boundary limit to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you really can't go beyond this circle.
That's right. That's right.
Because we just end up in the circle. Well, that's a very good point. Thank you. Other thoughts?
That's all the hands. Oh, I see. let me see, if you trace one line, this is from Helen, if you trace one line with your finger from the inner loop, the lines go from the center to the outside, then in again.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely correct. And we'll be following that tracing shortly. Yeah, it's fascinating. I really do recommend go to YouTube and do a search for just the pentacle of Venus, or just about any keywords will bring this up. And there are fabulous animations that show you in sequential time exactly how this pattern is formed. It's mesmerizing, I must say. And it's not anything like as straightforward as you might think. Okay, other thoughts about this?
Well, that's all the hands I see right now, and that's all the questions I see. So,
okay,
we have one more. Hold on.
Right.
Please go ahead, Ann.
Hello, I was thinking that we were looking at it in a two-dimensional way. What if we saw it in a three-dimensional way? Then we would be having spheres in where the five-pointed star is fixed. I don't know if I'm right.
Well, it's interesting because one of the senses of the movement into a tighter and tighter spirals towards the edge is as though you're looking at a sphere face on and they are wrapping around the sphere. That's in fact an illusion because this is a two-dimensional pattern traced in the heavens. However, it very definitely has feels like a sphere, has spherical attributes. Thank you. Other thoughts? Anybody else? Okay. Anybody?
Nope.
No?
We're good.
Okay. Great work. Thank you. Here's some additional physical attributes. The star at the center, as somebody pointed out, is actually one of 4 upright 5-pointed stars that can be traced using the crossing points within the figure. There are also 6 reversed pentagrams that can be drawn using these crossing points. Now, of course, you could turn the whole thing upside down and you would have 6 upright and 4 down pointing, but that would require that the innermost lotus shape would be down pointing. So my preference is that it is oriented in this way. Okay. There are, of course, also 4 upright, oops, I'm getting ahead of ourselves here. Yeah, here we go. Oh, yeah, here's the 10 stars shown together. And this is them without the path of Venus. There are, of course, 4 pentagons and 6 reverse pentagons, making 10 pentagons, again shown without the path. Here are all the stars and pentagons shown without the path. The figure seems to be bound by a circle, but the circle is actually made up of a series of continuous, subtly overlapping arcs. Somebody pointed that out. I include the circle, as you see the light blue thin line circle there, just as a point of reference, and you can see how closely the outer perimeter of these looping arcs conforms to the circle. It's interesting. Beginning at the center, these arcs unwind as a spiral until they reach the outer edge, then wind back inwards on an identical but mirrored arc as they approach the center once again. There are 5 each of these inward and outward paths. The small center loops, as someone points out, represent the time that Venus is in retrograde. It's interesting. The path of Venus can also be viewed as a series of 8 overlapping 5-petaled lotuses, which somebody was able to see. Starting at the center, we have the first 5-petaled lotus, which embraces only itself. The second 5-petaled lotus embraces the first. The third embraces the inner 2 lotuses. And by embrace, I mean that in addition to its own outline, it encompasses the outline of all the lotuses within its perimeter. The fourth lotus embraces the inner 3 lotuses. The fifth lotus embraces the inner 4 lotuses, but has a unique property. Unlike the other 6 lotuses, which are formed by a continuous line, in the 5th series, each petal leads back onto itself and thus must be drawn separately. Let me show you what I mean. When drawing from the tip of a petal of any of the lotuses except the 5th, the line that describes the lotus is continuous. Here we move from the tip of the top petal to the center. The line then continues to the tip of its near opposite petal, returns to the center once again, moves out to an opposite petal, returns to the center, and continues on in this way until the lotus is completed. But when we trace the 5th, and only the 5th lotus, which is also the middle lotus, the line takes us into the center as before, but then instead of leading to another petal, it just completes the petal. Thus, each petal of the 5th lotus is separate and independent of each other. Now, I'll just say at this point, note the number involved here. Okay, with the 6th lotus, all is back to normal. The continuity of line resumes, and it embraces the inner 5 lotuses. The 7th lotus embraces the inner 6 lotuses, which leaves the 8th lotus, depicted here by the white line, whose outer petals are curvilinear. That is, they have no point. They don't come to a point. This 8th outermost lotus embraces the entire figure. In fact, it is the entire figure. And its outer profile, as I mentioned before, is so close to that of a circle that you have to look close to see the breaks that distinguish the petals. All the lines in the path of Venus are included in this 8th series of 5 petals. Okay, 8 times 5 makes a total of 40 petals. As Scott very astutely pointed out, it just so happens that Venus forms a pentagram in the night sky every 8 years, with it returning to its original point every 40 years, with a 40-day regression. 40 petals, 40 years, and a 40-day regression, which makes this as good a time as any to cite a quote from Albert Einstein. He said, "Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous." Speaking of God, Wikipedia states that some religious scholars believe that the path of Venus was the basis for the number 40 becoming sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. So, we have a new 5-fold figure formed by the Lord of the 5th ray every 8 Earth years, which is, by the way, every 13 Venusian years. Anyone remember which numerical sequence 5, 8, and 13 belong to? That's right, the Fibonacci sequence. 5, 8, and 13 give us all 3 elements of a phi relationship: the lesser part, the greater part, and the whole. And of course, the pentagram of Venus traces every 8 years is itself a mathematical demonstration of phi, including the pentacles that it forms. So we have the Lord of the 5th ray responsible for a shape that demonstrates through the numbers 5, 8, and 13 and creates a phi-based figure.
Francis?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question here from Malia, and it was a few minutes ago, so sorry about
No
that,
problem.
Malia. She asks if that fifth lotus is a kind of ring pass knot.
Yeah, it will. Take a look at that. We're at this point just looking at the physical attributes. We're going to get to the second phase, which considers significance and concept. And let's hold your question until that point, because it's not really a physical ring pass knot, but in terms of its subjective content, it may well be just that. So hold that thought.
Okay, and then we have another one, and it may fall in the same category. This one's from Anne
That's
Veronica. The soul on the fifth path integrates with the personality, and the monad integrates with the soul.
Yes, indeed. That's another one to hold until the next segment. But do, both of you, keep that thought. I'm not dismissing you. I'm just saying part of the discipline of doing these analyses is to hold to the segment of the analysis that we're working on. And right now, we want to get as much of a catalog of physical attributes as we can, so we'll have a lot to work with when we move on to the juicy part, which, at least for some, might be considered, its significance and meaning. So hold those thoughts and please bring them back up when we get to that segment, which is coming right up. Okay, so everybody recognize that sequence? It's the Fibonacci sequence. Oh, wait a minute. Where am I here? Oh, yeah, wait a minute. Oh, I didn't skip George Carlin. We can't skip George Carlin. So, speaking of God, well, it's like suddenly somebody else made this slide presentation. Let me move it up here. Right. Okay, now I'm resynced. Okay. So the Fibonacci sequence, right, which is illustrated by this, and of course the pentagram is a demonstration of phi. So now on to George. George Carlin, who called God the invisible man in the sky, would probably call this discussion and the path of Venus phi in the sky. Okay, that's it for the physical attributes. Unless you have further observations, we'll move on to the second phase of DK's analysis. Any last-minute physical points to be brought forward about the physical attributes of this symbol?
I don't see any.
Okay, let's move on. DK separates the next stage into two parts as follows. And let's get a reader for this.
Okay, let's try Asha again and see if her sound problems are... Okay, go ahead please, Asha. We can't hear you. Nope, we still can't hear you. Sorry about that. Okay.
Hello. What's up?
No, I'm listening for Leuna. Can you go ahead and read it for us, Leuna?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
A comprehension in the astral or emotional body of its quality, the reaction of a sensitive response to the impact of its qualitative nature, a conceptual consideration of its underlying idea of what it is intended to teach, of the intellectual meaning it is intended to convey.
Thank you, Laura. So in the interest of time, we'll consider both these steps at the same time. But when sharing, you're welcome to speak to either stage. So, considering the list of physical attributes as well as those you brought forth, what quality, significance, and/or meaning can we ascribe to the figure formed by the path of Venus? Here's one example each based on quality or significance and meaning. The existence of this path creates what I call a rent in the veil between the seen and the unseen realms of existence. Thus, it is an outer demonstration of what I believe is a pattern formed on the inner planes, and thus feels to me like a verification of these unseen realities. Okay, now more conceptually, Venus is clearly expressive of the energy of 5 and thus of Phi. I can't help but think that the proliferation of life on Earth in strict adherence to the law of Phi has its roots in the connection between the Earth and Venus. So, any further ideas about the quality, significance, and/or meaning of the figure formed by the path of Venus? As you're thinking about this, you may wish to consider our list of physical attributes. Any one of these. We can have an exercise if we have 5 hours instead of an hour and a half. We can take these point by point and extrapolate a significance and meaning from every one of these physical ideas. But taken as a whole, they're a good list for inspiration. Take a minute to review. Just raise your hand when you're ready to comment on the significance and meaning that the figure might carry.
Okay, I'm going to go to Morya because she has a couple of comments, and then we have Anne Veronica's comments, and then there's a couple of other hands. So let's start with you, Morya.
Okay. I'm staring at that figure, and I'm just finding it so incredibly evocative. So I'm asking the question, at what stage would it be appropriate to meditate on that symbol? Since you were suggesting that we stick to the simple geometric symbols at the beginning of this broadcast.
Yes, indeed. Well, in fact, the upcoming stage is very specifically a meditation on this symbol, and we will be covering that stage. So at this point, it's still this. It's an inward journey, right? You start with the outer form, and you note, in order to become fully aware, that is, to gain all the knowledge you can through this group effort of this symbol. And then we move from basically from inward to the meaning and significance, and from there we move into its underlying purpose or its own depth. What is it? What even its meaning and significance doesn't address its unified purpose. And it's at that stage that we move into a meditative approach. So hold on and we'll get there.
Thank you.
But even at this level, it takes a more contemplative approach in order to gain access to this info. So anybody have any ideas about this meaning?
Let's try Asha again.
Okay.
Okay, Asha, can you speak now?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I have a headset. I was trying to use the... This may be too simplistic, but the thought comes as this is a portal into the 5th dimension or something like that.
Oh, that's very evocative, and I don't think it's simplistic at all. Yes. If I was going to design a portal into the 5th dimension, this would be a prime candidate. Yeah, one can imagine the cells moving right through that central lotus into a very different kind of space. So thank you for that. And that's entirely appropriate, because remember, DK emphasizes the importance of being able to feel and have a feeling experience, which has to do with the quality of this figure. So thank you for that. Anyone else? Well, there were a couple of people that had comments.
Yes, and I'm going to Anne now. She was the second one with the comment, and then we have several other hands. So Anne, please go ahead.
Well, hello. I would say again the thing I said the last time, but also as I was looking at this symbol, it bothered me that it goes to the outer circle, then it comes back in again. And it gave me a feeling, why should it go back? And then I thought of it in third dimension. So it's like it's doing a circle, but then going out of the circle and going on another dimension again. I think I'm on the same thought with Asha. Asha was the... So it's not going again, back again at the same level.
Yes. Well,
as if it's going back, we see it as it going back again, but it goes on another level if you see it three-dimensionally.
That's fantastic, and of course that's true in the heavens. As you know, this is a representation of the pattern Venus makes as seen from Earth. Actually, it's a pattern made when you're above both planets, but and it never goes back to the same point. Exactly to the same point, because the Venus is continuing on its path. And this is very particularly demonstrative of this second solar system, which is spiralic in nature. It's not rotational. If this pattern was static, as in the last solar system, you would just be covering the same ground, which would be completely form-based. This solar system is a combination of direct movement, which is the energy of the next solar system, and cyclic movement, which is the energy of the last, giving us a combination which creates a spiral. And so you're right, every time this line re-enters this sphere, something has shifted forward somewhat. Just what that is definitely beyond my pay grade, but we can definitely sense that there is both a cyclic movement, because everything comes in cycles, as well as a forward progression. So thank you for that. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Yes. Other thoughts, folks?
We still have several comments, and I'll call on you people in just a minute, but I wanted to let you know that there have been a couple of comments, a couple of notes written, and Clesia has written something that gets back on what Morya said earlier, and it's the fifth series of petals with the unique property leads back unto itself. And then she has a question, reorientation on the path relating to the law of repulse. She says, kind of that ring past not. And that was what Morya mentioned earlier, because it had the different properties.
Right. Well, it's interesting, you know, the fifth is the one that stands between the two inner and the two outer lotuses. Of the upright lotuses, you'll notice that there's two outside or above it and two inside. So it's a place of, one could see it as a place of equilibrium that way, which you know, may account for the fact that it can be drawn back on itself and the petals are distinct. However, as I will point out in my section on this, the fifth and the fifth ray in general are the number of separation, right? So the fifth lotus, it's not surprising that these petals are each discrete and not continuous. Thank you. Other thoughts? Hello. Are you there?
Whoops, I'm sorry. I was talking and was on mute. Gabriel says, if I were designing the egoic lotus, the imprint evidence of the solar angel, the son of mind, upon the human higher mental plane, I'd make it like this. At least it would look like this from the human earth point of view, if not from the soul's own place or from Venus.
Well, knowing Gabrielle, I have no doubt that in the next Maha Manvantara, she will, in fact, be designing paths like this. So keep up the good work. Thank you for that comment.
Okay, next, let's go to Leah.
That central petal space really feels to me like the heart. So you enter through the pattern into the heart, and that brings up the whole relationship between Venus and the Earth, and right relationship, which is so perfect in this pattern, which makes me think of the Ray 5 Venus, Ray 3 Earth, and the 8-year period, which again reflects perfectly the Fibonacci pattern.
Thank you. Yes, I have the same feeling, and I think this is a feeling, it's also the center of the figure, so it has its basis in the physical attributes, but there is a sense of it being a portal into the heart of the figure. I can't help but think, this is very strong relationship between the second ray logos of Jupiter and Venus, and I can't help but thinking that beyond that portal, that you move into contact with the second ray logos, just as the fifth aspect leads to the second, interestingly enough. That's one where it moves from the odd to the even, just as we move from the mental to the Buddhic plane. So yes, thank you. DK really opens it up when he allows one to express, both the feeling and the qualitative sense, as well as the conceptual and meaning sense of these figures. Okay, folks,
Okay.
Anything more?
Yes, I still have several people here on the list, but Malia said something that I was thinking exactly when Leah said that, and that was that it was the portal. I was thinking it was the portal to Sirius, and Malia says it lifts us up to Sirius. So a couple of us got that that thought there, but let's go to Scott, please.
Yeah, Scott.
Several things come to mind. Pointing out that first off, the 5, 8, and 13 are the 5th, 6th, and 7th Fibonacci numbers. I think the pattern, of course, is extremely beautiful. It's a rose pattern with 5 petals. And what I was thinking of is remembering that Venus is the one planet that rotates backwards. And so looking at the Earth spinning in one direction, Venus in the opposite, and dancing through this pattern through these years. And I was thinking, what would it look like if you saw dervishes dancing this?
Wow. Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. And if we had the eyes to see, we very well might be seeing just that if we were to contemplate this pattern.
And so the spinning opposite each other and looking at each other as they dance through this pattern. But Earth in the center, it's an Earth-centered point of view, sort of geocentric as we used to see the solar system, but nonetheless valid. Also, remembering the pattern of the petals there, it reminded me of that the heart diagram that shows up in the Bailey books that comes from, I don't remember the guy's name right now. You remember that, the very detailed heart diagram that's made up of these kind of petals as it wraps around. There's some connection there. There's a heart connection as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. There's another fascinating fact, which is that when Venus is, as Scott mentioned, Venus turns in the opposite direction on its own axis and very slowly. And it just so happens, quote unquote, right? Excuse me, that when Venus passes between the Earth and the Sun, at the precise moment that it passes, it always shows the same face towards Earth in its rotation. That is synced precisely. This is an extraordinary fact, and it would seem that the chance is beyond any odds that could be true. But it is, in fact, true. Another way of saying it is if you painted a spot on Venus, and every time Venus passed between the Sun and the Earth, that same spot would be pointing towards the Earth. Okay, other thoughts, folks?
Yes, we have lots of them. And I want to say thank you, Scott, forevermore. Whenever I look at that pattern of Venus, I'm going to see the dervishes there on top of it.
Whirling dervishes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Helen says, the fifth ring being unique in its orbit reflects the idea of detachment as a key to progressing to the next layer of petals.
Ooh, I like that. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the fifth lotus having that detached quality, right? Uh-huh. Nice. Okay.
And Veronica adds 6 plus 4 equals 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I consider that too. It's the whole number, which of course reduces back to 1, right? It's a tetractys. And it's interesting, this idea of 4 and 6, this movement, all done through 5. So we have 4, 5, and 6, which any good Sagittarius is aware of. Other thoughts?
Gabrielle says it makes me wonder what the Earth patterns look like from Venus.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Yeah, it's can be computed. They can do these other patterns. I've seen pictures of patterns. For instance, the Earth and Venus as seen from Mars looks very much like this. So it's not just unique from Earth. Remember that very first photo after the original photo, the second photo that I showed you was the pattern as seen from the Sun that Earth and Venus make. So it's really must be remembered that this Earth is involved in this pattern, right? If you were in a fixed position in the heavens looking at Venus, it would just be rotating around the Sun. It wouldn't be making this pattern. So it's the combination, it's the dance between Earth and Venus that makes this. So therefore it has to do with a relationship rather than so much the identity of Venus. It has to do with the relationship between the two planets. Yeah, other thoughts?
Yes, I'm going to read one more comment, and then I still have 3 hands up. So this is from Anne Veronica, and it says, I just love this. What would it sound like? Something so beautiful. There is a book on the patterns of the planets of the solar system from Earth. So there's a book on that, but don't you love that? What would it sound like?
Well, I think it would definitely include the fifth and a dominance of, which is called, the dominant, and I think we would, that would be definitely a part of it. But of course, sound at this cosmic level is beyond anything we can comprehend. It would be transportive, to say the least. Thank you for that.
Okay, Guadalupe, please go ahead.
Thank you. One thing that really grabbed me was the when astrologically the small center loops represent the time that Venus is in retrograde. For me, or from us, when we are growing, sometimes we perceive that growth as expansion, and we go and go and grow. And then from when we are at the edge and perhaps a little bit dispersed, I have to come back to the center in this inner loop of retrograde phase, in which it brings me to the center, it brings me to what I conceive as the love center, Ray 2 obviously, and in that retrograde phase, I have to review, reinstall, reassess. Is a representation of this love that makes me become detached, and I could go into a more enlightened or more detached loop and go out again to the further loop or further spiral in growth.
It's beautifully said. I love that. Yes, in fact, maybe we could all use an overhaul in our understanding of what retrograde is all about. You don't buy a new car or a new house during Mercury retrograde. You wouldn't believe the computer problems I had just before this webinar started. But from a higher point of view, it is a time of positive collapse, you could say. That is inner introspection rather than expansion. And it couldn't be more beautifully described, both what you just said and in this illustration of the purposefulness of these periods of retrograde. They're not random. They're not like cattle prods. They're once you really one gets into the cosmic rhythm, they are the natural yang period to the yin outer expansiveness. So that was really beautifully said. Next thought.
Okay. Asha, please go ahead.
Well, I had two thoughts that I just subjectively just wanted to share, but after hearing everyone's comments, I now have 5 thoughts. First of all, the dervishes that Scott mentions, when Buddha comes down at Wesak at the mountain, they're dancing and they're pounding their feet, and I've always wondered quite what the movements they're making with their feet. And I sort of see them, in the valley, and I wondered if this might be something that thought occurred to me. But the dervishes, like you, BL, it's really just I don't know, something about it that really is very evocative. And I don't know, again, another simplistic comment. When I was a child, my parents took me to Russia, and I don't know why I'm remembering this, but the 2 toys that I was given was these nestling dolls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There were 5, and they went one inside each other, and there was this metallic thing which you could expand. It would become 2-dimensional. It would be flat, and then you would pull it out, and it was made of wires, and the wires were so intricately interwoven, like this, the movement here. And I've never really seen that toy in the since that time. And was Russia one of the two countries that you mentioned? It was France, and what was the other one?
Austria.
Oh, Austria.
No, I can't remember offhand. Does anybody know the ray of Russia? Scott, do you know that? I can't pull it up offhand. What it is.
So that was one thing that came to me, and I just used to, those 2 pieces of toys would sit there on my shelf, and I would remember playing with them in my childhood. Mm-hmm. And Lady Liberty, the crown, and if you're sort of below her, looking up, the crown sort of comes around, and you've got that flame, the torch, mm-hmm. and then it sort of weaves around like that too. Mm-hmm. And I get a feeling of being, I don't know if I'm just thinking outside the Pentagon, I suppose, but I sort of think of being, I don't know, like the Earth. I mean, I know, there's the Earth moving into the orbit there, but it's almost like a vertex pulling us up through these through this dance here? It's just like gently swirling around and pulling
Yes.
us up, pulling us up, pulling us
I
up.
think you're, yeah, it has its, that is in fact its purpose, is as I see it, is that it is, this pattern affects the earth, you know, in just that way, that it's the motive force of moving along the spiral. So yeah, I share that. I share that idea. We have to keep moving, folks.
Okay.
We're going to go over. We're going to go over. So
okay,
if you
Eva,
can accept that, we're now going to move. We're going to be going to about 3:45 in order to finish this. I knew this was a long webinar, but just a heads up on that. If you can't make it, that's fine. But hang in there as long as you can.
okay, I want to tell you real quick that Eva either had it handy or looked it up, and Russia's soul ray is 6 and personality is ray 7.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so are we moving on to the next slide, or?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just
okay, because I have two more comments.
Fine. Should keep them succinct, just in the interest of time. I could stay here all day myself, but
okay. Please go ahead, Vera.
Yeah, the pattern suggests unity, interconnectedness. This one line connects all the points and all the little loops and petals in the whole overall pattern, so connectedness.
Yes, it's both unity and diversity as one, which is how we understand the plan to be manifested, right? That the diversity is actually part of the unity, and that if you go high enough, you find the interconnection. So this becomes an amazing metaphor for, you know, the interconnectedness of all existence. Thank you for that. That's a very important point. Very important point.
Victor, please go ahead.
Hi there, everyone.
Hi, Victor.
I'm not too sure if I can verbalize what the impression or something I'm getting from this. The thing that I'm leaning toward or trying to get a feel for is that this pattern that we see from Venus, if we look up in the sky, maybe we can see it, Venus in the sky, but over time and through space, this pattern evolves. And as an individual, I look at my life like I would be looking at Venus as a point in time and space, but my own life creates a pattern that I am unable to, or I can't see it with my 5 senses. It takes going beyond the 5 senses to even conceive or theorize what that pattern might be.
Yeah, that's a great thought. That, you know, each of us, if at some point when we're, you know, this veil of separation is lifted and we're able to see the continuum back through our lives, we'll see a pattern of evolution. And you know, as Victor says, you know, who knows what that pattern is like? I would imagine that at first it was rough and uneven and non-symmetrical, but that at some point it starts to fall and follow the flow of symmetry, probably based on our ray types, you know. So thank you, Victor. I'm going to ask that we just keep moving right along here, because we do have some material to cover yet.
Okay, that was the last hand raised comment. There's one more from Anne Veronica. What we are seeing is the movement from the sky that we are forgetting that it spirals around itself.
I'm sorry. Could you just say that again? I was
okay. It's probably two thoughts here. What we are seeing is the movement from the sky. We are forgetting that it spirals around itself.
Okay, a clarification, which is that this is the pattern seen above the Earth, because you have to lift above the Earth in order to get off the plane of the ecliptic, in order to look down on this pattern. It's actually a triumph of computer science that they are able to discern how this is made. Thank you for that. So I'm going to move ahead now. Here are some of my own thoughts on this. Each set of 5 lotus petals seem to represent nested, and as one moves toward the circumference, progressively inclusive realms of consciousness, or Leia centers. The inner 7 lotuses could easily be seen as the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, with the 8th, like the octave, representing the entire cosmic physical plane, the unity that was spoken of. The expanding inclusivity demonstrated by these 8 levels of 5-petaled lotuses could also represent successive initiations. The 8th all-inclusive lotus, which is the number of the Christ, most closely resembles the circle, which is ever the symbol of cosmic consciousness. So you can see is that as you move towards the circle, you conform, the lotuses conform more and more to the absolute. So if we see these as lotuses, as initiations, that conforming is progressive. Okay. As mentioned, the 5th lotus is the only one that, it's a circle. The 5th lotus is the only one that cannot be drawn as a continuous line. Possibly this is because 5 represents the energy of separation. It's also the midpoint between the inner and outer 2 lotuses. Notice that here the petals are each in their own color. The innermost lotus, like our physical plane existence, is the most separate and discrete. This is just, by the way, this is just one series of metaphors. I'm not saying that this is, by any means, the only way this could be looked at. The little loops in the center, which represent the periods of Venus in retrograde, are closed on themselves and seem separate from the expansiveness of the petals. That was a point brought out already. The sharpest points, or breaks, illustrated by the, which are highlighted here, sharpest points or breaks at the tips of the petals occurs in the innermost petals, the sharpest break, right? These breaks, which represent a fall back towards the center of form aspect, are progressively less abrupt as one moves towards the circumference of the figure, representing progressively closer alignment with the One. If while traveling on the outward arc, one could resist the impelling force of that point, of the break, and instead stay on the upward arc leading to the next level of expansion, like an initiation, one could move into the sphere of influence of the next lotus. When all attraction to the world of form is overcome, one moves onto the level of the 8th lotus. Here, no break occurs, and one's path includes the whole. The jiva becomes the octave, 1 and 8, demonstrating as 5. Speaking musically, the 1, 5, and 8 create the musical 5th, an interval attributed to the soul, as the 3rd is attributed to the personality. In this solar system, certainly in relation to the Earth, it is quite possible that Venus is sounding the musical 5th. Okay, we're already over time, but if you bear with me, we're almost done, but we have a little bit to go. The next stage in DK's analysis is threefold. He tells us the stage of the synthetic grasp of the purpose of a symbol, of its place in an ordered manifesting plan, and of its true unified intent. The stage is not about attributes, rather it has to do with synthesis and unity, synthetic purpose and unified intent. Just as the first stage has to do with the physical plane, the second with the astral, and the third with the mental, this stage suggests we apply our intuition and thus achieve an even more elevated awareness of our subject. Notice, too, that this stage is threefold. The stage of the synthetic grasp of the purpose of a symbol, synthetic grasp of the purpose, of its place in an ordered manifesting plan, and of its true unified intent. And those are three, but they're three aspects of the same synthetic purpose. So, what is the synthetic purpose or unified intent of the path of Venus? So the presumptuous question, right? How can we know? Just mere mortals running around on the surface of Earth. But we're going to give it a shot anyway. We're angels fear to tread, right? So, and what may have been its place in an ordered manifesting plan? Okay, just as our list of physical attributes helped us to extrapolate significance and meaning, perhaps our list of significance and meaning will help point us towards a synthetic understanding of the purpose and place of the path of Venus. And of course, this list only includes the points that I brought out. Since I can't read your minds in advance, I would love to be able to do that. So also think of the other points that were made during this. So we might ask, what single purpose embraces all the attributes listed here? Any ideas? Take a moment to consider. And let me know, let me know when you get a response. But feel free to take your time. No one can turn this one on a dime. What are the possibilities around it's the synthetic purpose or unified intent of the path of Venus, and what may have been its place in an ordered manifesting plan?
Nothing yet. They're all still thinking. There we go. Please go ahead, Leona.
I think it's universal love beyond anything that we can understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. All the aspects that come under the heading of universal love. Great. Thank you, Leona. Appreciate that.
And Malia writes to uplift the human spirit so we can live as souls.
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something there, since Venus is it's the Venusians after a stint on Sirius that have become our souls, and so the connection is dynamic and continuous. Thank you.
Okay, please go ahead, Terry.
Thank you.
Hi, Terry.
Very, very tentative, but I think it must be bound up fundamentally with the illustration and life involved in the fourth dimension. Because I think it illustrates the fourth dimension. So therefore it must be living out that fourth dimension, which would have an enormous impact upon the Earth. A great
go ahead.
way of helping the Earth.
So by revealing the fourth dimension, it helps to pull us beyond the three that we're so familiar with.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
Thanks, Terry. Anyone else dare to
Asha, please go ahead.
imagine?
Synthesis, unity, love, fifth dimension.
Right, so you're gonna trump Terry's fourth dimension with a fifth dimension. Huh? I would imagine that there's definitely a fifth dimensional aspect, and even beyond that, we can see this, really as almost like a funnel that pulls us into the higher dimensions. So yes,
Yeah,
I
I
think
get
you're
that
both.
too. I get the funnel, and yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I don't see anything.
Okay. Here's my idea as to the synthetic purpose of the path of Venus and its place in an ordered manifesting plan. Being in its fifth round, a full round ahead of Earth, Venusian humanity is in process of perfecting the fifth principle of Manas. And as Venus is negatively polarized to Earth, it has become possible, to quote DK, for a mysterious absorption by Earth of Venusian force. This force is monastic. In fact, Venus is responsible for the coming in of mind on Earth's scheme, as allegorized in the myths of Prometheus and Lucifer. The structured motion of the phi-infused, five-fold, 40-petaled lotus created by the path of Venus as seen from Earth continues to sound the note of this psychic link. Okay, the final stage is very quick, folks. Final stage in DK's expanded criteria for analyzing a symbol is identification with the quality and purpose of the symbol as it is illuminated by the mind held steady in the light. This final stage brings into activity the brain as well as the mind. Talk about speaking from above downwards. I can't remember who it was that wanted to know when the meditation process came in. Well, it's during these last two. In contemplating its synthetic purpose, it's definitely a meditative function. But in this one, we're actually asked to identify with, rather than merely reflect on, the quality and purpose of the path of Venus. So we're going to take exactly 1 minute to do this, starting now. Okay. I'd like to end our survey, number 5, with this list from a treatise on cosmic fire. I was going to take the time to have this read out, but I would just like you to, in fact, I'll just read it real quickly, just to get a sense of how deeply 5 and 5th ray and the 5th aspect are connected with the mental process. 5th cosmic plane, the cosmic mental. The 5th systemic plane, the mental plane. The 5th subplane of the physical, Cassius. The 5th principle, Manas. The 5th law, fixation, the law of concretion. The 5th ray, concrete knowledge. The 5th round, the round of monastic attainment. The 5th root race, the Aryan, mental development. The 5th subrace, the Teutonic and Anglo-Saxon, concrete mind. The 5th group of devas, fire devas of the mental plane. The 5th Manvantara, 3/5 of the Manasaputras achieve. The fifth scheme, the Lord of concrete science, that's Venus. The fifth Maha Manvantara, or solar system. The solar logos achieves his fifth major initiation. The fifth chain, principle evolution, fire Davids. The fifth hierarchy, the great builders, the greater builders. Vibrations of the fifth order, Manasic. It's from a treatise on cosmic fire. Okay, well, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar. Next month, we'll begin our survey of the number 6, which will include an analysis of the six-pointed star. If you've been following the reading list, if you've been following the reading in The Key to the Universe and or a beginning guide to constructing the universe, take a look at the chapters on the number 6 this month. And if you haven't done so, I urge you to read the introduction on symbols in Glamour World Problem, which is on pages 1 through 25. It's a fabulous read, especially if you intend to take on the daily practice of meditating on a symbol, which I urge you to do. Okay, for today's meditation, I'd like to lead you in a guided visualization using what DK calls the fifth ray formula. Here's his introduction on the subject. The fifth ray formula is of exceeding potency at this time and should be used often, but with care by those upon this line of divine energy. It has most powerful integrating properties, but the person who employs it must be mindful to visualize and hold in his mind's eye the even, balanced, equilibrized distribution of the divine energy set in motion by the use of this formula. Makes me think of that fifth lotus, the balanced, equilibrized, even. Okay, so we'll start and end with an Om. Towards me I draw the garment of my God. I see and know his form. I take that garment piece by piece. I know its shape and color, its form and type, its parts, component, and its purposes and use. I stand amazed. I see not else. I penetrate the mysteries of form, but not the mystery. I see the garment of God. I see not else. Love of the form is good, but only as the form is known for what it is, the veiling vase of life. Love of the form must never hide the life which has its place behind the one who brought the form into the light of day and preserves it for his use, the one who lives and loves and serves the form, the one who is. The word goes forth from soul to form. Behind that form I am. Know me. Cherish and know and understand the nature of the veils of life, but know as well the one who lives. Know me. Let not the form of nature, their processes and powers, prevent thy searching for the mystery, which brought the mysteries to thee. Know well the form, but leave it joyously, and search for me. Detach thy thought from form, and find me, waiting underneath the veils, the many-sided shapes, the glamours and the thought forms which hide my real self. Be not deceived. Find me. Know me. Then use the forms, which then will never veil nor hide the self, but will permit the nature of that self to penetrate the veils of life, revealing all the radiance of God, his power and magnetism, revealing all there is of form, of life, of beauty and usefulness. The mind reveals the one. The mind can blend and fuse the form and life. Thou art the one. Thou art the form. Thou art the mind. Know this. Okay, that's it for today. Don't forget to donate a few bucks to the Morya Federation at moryafederation.com, which will help pay the yearly fee for this GoToMeeting account that makes these webinars possible. Thanks to Brett. These webinars are available on makara.us. Thank you, BL, for your continued and valuable assistance. And keep spreading the word, folks. Go out, find one other person, and ask them to join us with these webinars. Send them a link. And thank you all for attending. Our next webinar, always on the third Sunday of the month, will be on October 18th. Okay, bye for now.
Bye, everyone.